Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so happy to introduce to you today's guest. Marie Incontrera is a speaker, social media, publicity, and TEDx speaker, author, avant-garde musician, and fitness enthusiast. Her consulting services include social media services for individuals and small businesses, media bookings, TEDx talk development, and speaker booking outreach and book launch services. Please join me in welcoming Marie Incontrera. Hey, Marie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to have you. So this is a podcast about transitions and mostly about career transitions. And I've had a chance to get to know you a little bit. And I know that you've had some significant transitions, or actually it sounds more like additions rather than transitions, because you're still doing some of the things that you were doing in your earlier career, but you've changed some things up. So why don't you maybe start us at the earlier days of your career pursuits and take us through that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I went to school for music, and I spent my 20s pretty much as a working musician, which of course means having odd jobs and things like that, but all music related. I was a composer and performer. I had a big band that did very well in the jazz scene, and our last performance was at Carnegie Hall, which I rented out Carnegie Hall, and we put on a performance there, and it was one of the highlights of my life.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. So I spent my 20s being a musician, and I definitely got to, I was sort of at the top of my game. I was doing really well. I was really successful. But the thing that nobody tells you when you're in music school is that you could be successful and you could be playing Carnegie Hall and not be making very much money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fast forward, and now I am an entrepreneur. I'm a social media, podcast publicity, and TEDx consultant. I'm also a speaker. I still play music, but because I have this great day job, I get to choose the gigs that I want to do. And I also get the freedom to try new things. So I'm always trying new things.
Yeah. What kinds of things?
Well, starting last year, I joined a roller derby team. I love to work out and stay active. So I've been trying some CrossFit. I do a little bit of martial arts here and there, and also, trying things like writing a book. I wrote 2 books last year. I'm working on a novel now, so trying new things because I have this great job now and the financial freedom to do so.
Wow. And, there's something about having, I don't want to say having been a musician, because you still are. And by the way, what I know you're also a composer. What instrument do you play?
Oh, piano.
Piano. Okay. And it sounds like because you don't have you know where the dollars are coming from now with your day job, which it sounds like you also enjoy. You probably are enjoying your music that much more because you're not completely depending on it for your income. And yet it sounds like you have a lot of freedom to make choices.
Exactly. That's exactly right. The thing with being a musician that nobody will tell you, when you're sort of in the thick of it, I was working in avant-garde, classical, and jazz, more jazz than classical toward the end. But a lot of the musicians that I played with, they were solely gigging performers. And sometimes a lot of them were playing 3 gigs a night in different places, 7 nights a week, and maybe making $150 a night.
Wow.
And when that's the financial reality, nobody's happy,
Right. It takes away from the passion. It takes away from the
Exactly.
actual joy and pleasure of
Mhm.
being an artist
Right.
when you can't make ends meet. And, let's be clear here. You are speaking to me today from your home office in Brooklyn, New York. So
Right.
you're talking about a New York City metropolitan area based, musician pool, right?
Right.
So we're talking about a very expensive place to live.
Absolutely.
When you're working that many hours, even if it's as something you love, you're working 7 days a week, it's going to knock your entire life sort of out of whack. I don't even want to say out of balance, because I think that most people don't really live in balance. They live with the right blend of things, or hopefully they live with the right blend of things that they
Absolutely.
enjoy. That's what we're hoping for with this
Yes.
podcast, actually. But I'm curious, when you said, fast forward, I'm now consulting, doing social media and podcast outreach for your clients, helping them prepare for TEDx talks and being a
Mhm.
speaker yourself. How did you get there? Like, where's tell us how you went from musician to all that you're doing now, because it wasn't
Mhm.
overnight, right?
Well, yes and no. So it's a funny story. You and I both know Dory Clark.
Yes.
Dory Clark has been a really good friend of mine for many, many years. And Dory she met me when I was a broke, starving artist.
Uh-huh.
And, Dory's very artistic in her life as well, and loves art and loves artists. And we became friends, and I sort of loved what she was doing. But of
Mhm.
course, I had no idea that it would ever fit into business, would ever fit into my life.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget it. It was just a little bit after my 30th birthday.
Mm.
And I was working at this job teaching music in a middle school. And for a number of reasons, it was a very, very difficult job. And I was coming home and trying to do my own music and just exhausted. And I was unhealthy because I had no time to do anything else. And,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards, living in a tiny studio that I had really outgrown.
Mm.
And I was in the lunchroom at this job, and Dory Clark texts me. And she goes, "I have an idea, quit your job." Who else can say that and actually make it happen?
Not a lot of people, but Dory Clark can.
Right. So I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you could become a virtual assistant." And she said, I can sort of put you in contact with a few people to help you get your start." And I did. I really, I didn't have a lot to lose. I was walking away with maybe 15 grand on a good year.
Wow.
So I said,
Living
well,
in New York.
exactly.
Wow.
And by the way, the way I made it work was that I had a studio that I lived in way past it was my first real apartment, and it was a studio that was really tiny.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I made it work. And I lived very simply. I loved thrift stores. I still do, but for different reasons.
Right.
Anyway, so I gave notice. I gave a month's notice. I said, we'll make this happen. I took a huge leap of faith, but it's not like I had a big cushy corporate job that I was leaving. I was going from almost nothing to nothing.
Right.
And I started virtual assisting, and slowly people started coming to me for the same thing over and over again.
Mm.
And also, which was podcast publicity and TEDx.
Mm.
And also, on top of that, I was working for a virtual social media firm. So I learned what to do, what not to do. I started to sort of cut my teeth with that. And eventually, social media clients started coming to me.
Mm.
And then, as time passed, I sort of left the firm because I had enough of my own clients. I said, let me go full time with this. And it's been really wonderful.
So Dory saw something in you. She saw
Mhm.
that you had an ability to organize things, or that you had she knew you had certain skill sets that would enable you to kind of take a kind of a jump into the virtual assistant world to start out.
I guess so. I mean, I had done some admin. I had taught a lot. I had done a little bit of administration
Oh, okay.
in my college, but I don't know that she knew that. I think she saw that I approached my music career very entrepreneurially.
Ah,
You
okay.
know, I always wanted to play the music I wanted to play.
Mm.
So I started my own band, for instance, and we were my big band, which is 10 or more people,
Wow.
was one of the better paid big bands in the city.
Wow.
So I think she probably saw the entrepreneurial spirit in that and said,
Yeah.
"Well, yeah, sure, do it."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, she knew I was crazy enough to work as hard as I did for music. So
Uh-huh.
it just ended up being something that I was able to channel my energy toward.
I love those moments in our lives when someone, maybe someone who really knows us and cares about us, it could even be someone in passing who just says something to you in a certain way and it just shifts your perspective and you step into action. I actually quit smoking that way.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was thinking about quitting smoking. This was 30 years ago, a long
yeah.
time ago. I was only 5 years old. No. But I remember I asked this guy I worked with, I said, so tell me about your experience quitting smoking. Cause I was really getting ready to, but I didn't quite have the guts.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and he just looked me in the eye and he said, you can do it. Just do it. You could do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then he said, you could do it today.
Right.
And I
Right.
did. I like that night I had my last cigarette and never had another one since. Now,
How's that for a paradigm shift?
I
Yeah,
know.
that's
So I
amazing.
think there's this something I call it. I'm not the only one who's called it this. I call it like those defining moments,
Yeah.
like Dory texting you and just saying, quit your job.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
who tells you to quit your job, you know?
Right.
But there is something about it's like there's a combination, almost a formula of sort of readiness for
Right.
something to
Mhm.
change
Mhm.
and then being open to that. And I think probably the regard that you held for Dory and the way you trusted her,
Absolutely.
it
Mhm.
allowed you to sort of take that step knowing that knowing that you'd be okay either way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I knew that I'd be okay. I mean, I was terrified. Let's
Were you?
let's let's be honest. I
Okay,
was
be honest.
absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
And my parents were terrified. Everybody was like, "What are you doing?" you know? And because I had been, I think, as, in financial, you know, not dire straits, but I wasn't in financial freedom
You were
for
cutting it close, right?
exactly for
Yeah.
a very, very long time. And everybody was kind of like, okay, what's she doing now?
Uh,
And I was scared too, but I think it was, Dory had basically taken the same leap of faith for herself.
yeah.
And so that kind of made me trust her in a
Yeah.
way. And I had seen, she'd created that kind of power in other people's lives. So I was like, well, if they can do it, why not
Yeah.
me?
That's
Why
right.
can't I change my circumstances? And I had the support,
Right.
when things went wrong in the beginning, I would call her and I'd be like, what do I do? The sky is
Yeah.
falling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, right. So you had a bit of a safety net in that way, at least an emotional one, right?
yeah.
And she did, she didn't just say quit your job. She said, quit your job, become a virtual assistant. I have some people I can refer to you.
Right.
So
Right.
it wasn't necessarily, oh, you'll be rolling in dough tomorrow.
Right.
But
Right.
she wasn't proposing that you start something from absolute zero. You
Yeah.
had a little something to start on. And yes, there was a lot of faith involved in that too. And
Yeah.
I know, fast forward today, I know that you don't regret that for one moment, but it does make a great story, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, I have an assistant now. He's new. Dory referred me to him. And
Ah,
he's actually her cousin.
uh-huh.
And he's in acting school. And so, like, she's kind of building the safety net for him as well, in terms of,
Yeah.
like, yeah, we're starting small. We're he's learning now, but
Right.
still there's a chance to, like, pay it forward and say, okay, now we can do this for someone else.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing that strikes me about that is it's like, Dory and you are building in his plan B for him. I mean, he has to step into it. But I do think there's something about when you are looking to make some kind of a significant transition for whatever reasons, that if you have some kind of a plan B in mind, I think it makes it a little bit easier to say, okay, I'm going to give this a try. If it doesn't work, I can always do this or do that. And I don't know if you were having those thoughts at that moment because you said you were pretty scared, but still, I think that it's almost like you were able to get that both and.
Yeah.
You could start doing some work where you could bring in, better income, feel a little more financially secure, but also still do your music.
Right.
And so how long ago was that when you started that?
Let's see. I quit my job on May 16th, 2016.
But who's counting which day?
And I know that because it was my half birthday of my 30th year.
Oh, it was your half birthday. Okay.
So I said, this is going to be it. I'm not turning 31 doing this. I like have to.
So you were really ready for something.
Yeah. I couldn't have done this at 25. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I'd made the mistakes. I'd grown up.
Yeah.
I was ready.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you telling me that, you were talking about like you were successful.
Yeah.
You were a successful musician. And it's an interesting definition of success, right? You were getting to do the kind of creative work you wanted to do. You got to interact with the kinds of people you wanted to interact with. You made it to Carnegie Hall of all things, right?
Yeah.
And I know you told me that, you probably, you could have been happy being a starving musician.
Right.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
But it got to the point where you mentioned that you were sort of almost normalizing the struggle.
Right. And that's not, that's something that's very common with at least musicians and definitely.
I think it's probably true with other professions too, right?
Yeah. Especially anybody in the creative fields, it's a badge of honor to say, hey, I'm struggling. I starved for my art. I'm going to let this thing kill me.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I had a conversation with a mentor once who, by the way, is still very successful musician, and he has a lot of institutional backing and way more than I ever had or could aspire to be because we just do different things.
Yeah.
He's an orchestral composer, and we were having lunch one day and my dad had said to me something like, you're never going to be able to retire. And I mentioned this to him. I said, my dad was talking about retirement and, he's quite a bit older than me and much closer to retirement age. And he said, I'm not retiring. I'm never retire. And I was like, you can't retire? You're almost a household name in the classical community. You can't retire. Wow. And that was a wake-up call for me, so it's really normalized across the whole profession.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's a way in our culture, and this is a slight departure from, or maybe even a major departure from, the community of artists and creative people. But I think there is a way in our culture, it's kind of that bootstrap mentality, There's this toughness. Us Americans are supposed to be tough and independent. And there is a way in which I think we've normalized going to work every day as being something that, the goal isn't to really enjoy it. It's work.
Right.
We've normalized going to work as being a means to an end rather than something that's integral to who we really are as people. I mean, yes, there are people who identify so strongly with their work that they don't know how to have other parts of their lives too.
Right.
But one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is because I think there's a lot of people out there who have normalized struggle, have normalized. And, if you're doing it with your eyes open and you're saying, look, I choose to be in struggle, that's one thing, because I love what I'm doing so much that I'm willing to put up with the struggle, which you did for many, many years, right? And then, you reached a point where you said, not sure that I want to struggle quite this much going forward. And I get the sense that that you do enjoy what you're doing for your day. You call it your day job, but I
Oh,
would
yeah.
imagine if you didn't enjoy it, you wouldn't be doing it. You would have found something else.
Oh, for sure. And to be clear, I say my day job, but I love it. I never imagined being so happy working for business people. And this is part of it. And it's funny because, business gets such a bad rap for
Yeah.
how they treat people and
Yeah.
but here's the truth. In art, it's customary to say, "Hey, I can't pay you, but it's great exposure."
Mm-hmm.
But in business, the only capital you have is money to say, "Work with me. Here's what I can pay you." You can't,
Yeah.
nobody in business is going to say, "Hey, I can't pay you, but it's great exposure to do my social media."
Right.
That just
Right.
doesn't happen.
Right. Right.
So what I find is that actually, at least in the community that you and I reside in
Right.
as professionals, people are so good to each other.
Yeah.
It's really kind of amazing.
Well, it
And
is. Yeah.
yeah, and that's just not the case. Like you're expected to, I think in art, you're expected to struggle and you're
Yeah.
expected to work for free and work for being grossly underpaid and that sort of thing. And in business, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not the only reason my business makes me happy, but
No, I'm sure not.
it's a big part of it. And, my work is hard sometimes and it is a struggle sometimes, but it's actually really satisfying.
Mm. So what do you like most about what you're doing?
I like that I get to be creative
Ah,
in a different way,
yeah.
and I do think that my schooling, at least in part, serves me in my
Mm.
business,
Oh, interesting.
because I do get to approach things in a very creative way and think about, come up with ideas that, hopefully the client wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
Or, if the client has thought of something, make it better, find a way to make it better.
I think about as a musician, thinking about, you know, your craft, your art as something that comes sort of from within and you put it outwards, but you're still always thinking about what can you give the audience? And I would
Yeah.
think with social media, with podcasting, with
Yeah.
TEDx, all of those things, you're always thinking about how can you creatively reach
Right.
an audience, right?
Right.
So in a way, it's not the same exact, you're not doing the same things, but
Right.
there is that kind of paradigm or that way that you think about things that really lends itself beautifully to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel creative in
Yeah.
everything that I do, which
Yeah.
is really rewarding.
Yeah.
And also it's just, I mean, it's the people I work with are so great. They're just
Yeah.
amazing people. They're kind, they're smart, and that's rewarding because, one thing that is often overlooked in artistry is collaboration.
Yeah.
And to be a good musician is to collaborate.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Unless you're playing solo.
right. which I hated doing.
And then you collaborate with me, myself, and I, right?
Exactly.
The three of you.
It's funny. I had a moment where I thought about being a concert pianist.
Ah.
I was young. I was like 18, first year in college and trying to figure out what direction this was all going to take.
Yeah.
And that to me was, when I actually sat down in a practice room and tried to practice the way that concert pianists do, I said, "Oh no, forget it."
Yeah.
So
Too isolating for you.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also know that part of your business now involves that you do have musicians and musical groups that are your clients. So
Yeah.
you do get to you get to use your musician eyes and help see the world through their eyes. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's gotta be fun.
Yeah, I work with an orchestra now, which is actually how you and I met in person.
That's
because
right.
I was in Boston,
Yeah.
with the Boston Modern Orchestra Project, and it's like I get to nerd out with them on the floor, but in a different way,
Yeah.
And they were looking for somebody who was a musician, to do their social media, and it I just happened to fill that niche.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's great. And now you also talked about liking to try new things. So, this whole entree over the last couple of years into the business world, right? there's got to be new things coming your way all the time with the work you're doing. So even though it's social media for all kinds of different professionals, entrepreneurs, businesses, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I mostly work with business professionals and thought leaders and, people who write for high profile publications and that sort of thing. But, for example, the salon that does my hair, yesterday I was there and the hairstylist said, well, what do you do? And I told her, and so we worked out a trade, so now all of a sudden I'm working with a hairstylist and
I love it.
So I had to do all, she was like, have you ever done this before? I said, well, no, but I'll do the research and I'll figure out the hashtags and we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so, something new.
Yeah. Well, and you're going to have the best looking hair in Brooklyn now.
Exactly.
I've done the same thing. I've traded. You have to, you want to watch those boundaries carefully sometimes with those arrangements, but I think they can be very beneficial. And it's a great way to sort of immerse yourself in someone else's business and understand something new. Yeah,
absolutely.
So do you have any, I'm curious about your trying new things. Is there anything new that you're planning on trying soon that you haven't tried yet? You have anything on the horizon?
Well, so this past year I was doing roller derby, and I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
As much as I can.
I can't imagine doing roller derby myself, but and you seem like such a gentle soul. So I have this image of you like becoming somebody else when you get into the, what do you call it? The rink?
The track, but yeah.
The track, and shoving people around, cursing at them, or I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm guessing you have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much gentler sport than people think because they think of the roller derby of the 1970s, and this is
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
it's definitely a lot safer than it used to be.
Okay.
There's no punching, there's no elbows, there's no fist fights and that kind of thing. It's more just blocking and checking.
I see.
And, I have a martial arts background. I've done jujitsu for most of my life, so it wasn't that much of a stretch to.
I see.
Even though I have to admit it's very scary.
Well. Yeah, you're on wheels, right?
Yeah. That's the scariest part is actually being on wheels, and when you're starting and you don't know how to stop.
Yeah,
and the way to stop is to fall or crash into something or somebody, or have somebody crash into you. So
sounds like the way I ski.
Yeah, which is something that I eventually want to try. I think my next thing will probably be I'd like to try Olympic weightlifting, not in just as an amateur thing to do, because I love weights, I love strength training, so that's something that I've been thinking about. But we'll see what next year brings.
Oh, that sounds like fun. So in thinking about all the twists and turns in life, right, and the different choices you've made professionally, what would be your best pieces of advice for someone else who's considering making a change, but maybe is a little reluctant or isn't sure where to start?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is, find your tribe. I would not have been able to do this without having, both Dory and also a really good support system of friends and eventually other entrepreneurs around me that, sometimes you just got to call somebody and say, hey, I don't know if anything of what I'm doing is right, you know?
Yeah.
And you need the support to be able to say that.
Yes.
And the other thing is think of who your ideal client is and also who your ideal client is not. Because that's something that, a great client relationship is priceless.
Yeah. Or other work relationships. I'm thinking that some people might be thinking about changing industries or changing jobs versus going the entrepreneurial route. But still, I think that really thinking about who do you want to be surrounding yourself with,
absolutely.
So there's sort of both the people who are, on your team, so to speak, your support system, and then who do you want to be interacting with, or what kinds of things do you want to be interacting with, and in what ways, and
Right.
have some ideas about that. And I think you really hit a nail on the head about, being able to call people, feeling that kind of safety and being vulnerable and not having to be perfect.
Yeah.
Those are really, really important things.
Mm-hmm.
So, Marie, if somebody wanted to work with you or wanted to find out more about you or maybe read one of your books, I didn't mean to skip over that you wrote 2 books in 1 year.
Oh.
I mean, that's no small potatoes. So
Thank you. They're short books.
They're short books. Well, do tell us for a moment what are the books about, and where can people get their hands on your wisdom if they want to read your books or they want to work with you?
Sure. So I do have 2 books. The first one is called Social Your Book Launch, and it's all about social media for authors. And the second one is called Spread Your Idea, and it's about the TEDx ideation process and, what a good idea looks like and what to expect in the pitch process.
Mm.
Both of them are self-published. I did the self-publishing school model.
Oh, okay.
They do the book in a weekend challenge and
right.
That's
right.
That. So that's how I got 2 books.
All right. Well, I know a few other people who've used self-publishing.
Yeah.
So they've had very good results with that. So
yeah, it was really a fun process. So you can find those on Amazon. My website is incontrera.com.
Okay.
INCONTRERA.com.
Great.
Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Twitter, Instagram, email me,
Well, it's a good thing we can find you on social media.
Yeah, exactly. If you couldn't, then I wouldn't be doing my job.
Then I'd be scratching my head going, Well, I want to thank you, and I also want to congratulate you for really taking charge of your life. I mean, it sounds like you were taking charge of it all along, but I do think that your story and your example is really a solid one for people, no matter what fields they're in that right now, to just think about what else might make you happy. How do you get there? What are the key elements that will help you to, start to make that happen and to really continue to move forward with it? And then also just trying new things like roller derby. Writing 2 books in a year. So congratulations on all your success and, more importantly, your happiness.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate it, and it's really fun to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Marie Incontrera. It was delightful to speak with her and learn about her many professional journeys and insights as she has developed her career and business. What is your takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 017. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Marie, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find our page at tammygoularloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.